And welcome back to Keyword Video at WMMBAM.com. Today we're talking with Republican Sheriff's candidate Todd Maddox in this primary election that goes off on, well, it finishes up on August the 14th. We're already voting. Todd, thanks for taking the time. Glad you're in here this morning.
Oh, my pleasure.
Let's talk first off, and we'll get a limited amount of time here, so let's hit the highlights.
Okay.
What do you see as the biggest changes in the sheriff's office should you be elected to Brevard County Sheriff?
Well, the first thing that's going to happen is, and we've talked about before, is a reduction in some of that command staff. We're up to around 21 of those command staff members, and they do a great job. But quite honestly, we just had here in the last few months, we promoted and made 4 majors at precincts. Now we have a major at every precinct, where we used to only have a commander and 4 lieutenants. Now we decided to add a major to that process as well. And basically that major is just a lieutenant's making about $15,000 more than he was making the day before when he was a lieutenant. Mm-hmm. So it's my position is that those lieutenants can do the jobs that need to be done out there administratively. They're managers as well. We don't need that much management staff. So there's going to be a different way we do business. We talked about, I'm going to streamline some of the our specialty units and make sure that we don't have overlapping functions. We don't need several units doing the same job. Obviously, drug problems, violent crimes, those things have to be tackled, and we got some great units in place for that. But we just need to focus on how they do their jobs and streamlining their functions there.
Are those multi-agency task force that we're talking about, or are they pretty much Sheriff's Department solely right now?
Most of them are all solely Sheriff's Office, with the exception of Game Over, which is a multi-agency task force. When I came here, we had Drug Task Force, which is a multi-agency task force, and quite honestly, we need to go back and look at something along those lines as well. Game Over's been successful. Drug Task Force was successful when we used it, and we limit a lot of our drug enforcement to the central part of Brevard, and sometimes the northern and the southern extremities get left out of that because we're limited on our resources. So we have to focus those resources where they're most needed. So, we go back to working with other agencies and look at building more task force. It saves everybody money. Plus, criminals don't know the jurisdictional boundaries. So, we need to work with those agencies in order to form better relationships. I use the example when I was over at Investigative Unit General Crimes. We instituted monthly meetings, luncheons with the other units like Melbourne and Palm Bay and stuff because, cops get territorial sometimes. But if you have a relationship with those guys and you work with them on a weekly or daily basis, you're a lot more apt to share that information than you are if you're just encountering them for the first time when you're working a case.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. As you look at the Sheriff's Department, as you look at the county and the problems that exist, what are the biggest law enforcement needs in Brevard County today?
It's going to be there's several needs out there. I-95 is opening up to a 6-lane highway. We got people driving 90 to 100 miles out there like it's a racetrack now. So
you mean 95 is not the speed limit?
You would think it is, and it's amazing. I have family in Alabama, so I travel up there on a routine basis, and you cross the Georgia line. It's amazing how people slow down as soon as they cross the Georgia line, and that's because you've got sheriff's offices and highway patrol up there working in conjunction with each other, enforcing some of those laws up there. And it's not only traffic laws, but the drug traffic and the drug trade coming up and down I-95 is tremendous out there. So we just started up a unit out there that's doing some interdiction. I think the first week they were out there, they've seized thousands of dollars and quite a bit of illegal drugs out there on the interstate.
Not using that evil P word, are they?
No, they're not, but they are using that evil HIDA grant that we've talked about before, the high intensity drug traffic area. So that's what's funding that interdiction team out there.
That evil P word being profiling,
right.
In case you're under a rock for the last several years. Profiling to me is just doing the job.
Profiling, that's all it is.
It's gotten a bad name.
It's gotten a bad name, but it's that's what it is. I mean, it's just doing the job. If you're working in an area where a particular type of individual happens to be committing the crime, that's what you're looking for. If you've got a suspect that's a white male in his mid-50s, you don't go looking for a Hispanic or black male in his 20s. So
that's very true. If you're looking at cost savings as the new sheriff, and we know we're in tough budget times,
right.
The county's going through its budgeting process as we speak. What are you looking at? What's going to save the Sheriff's Department money, and what are your priorities for the department? Where you're certainly going to spend money, and where you're going to look to save it?
Well, and we talked about earlier, looking at some of those big-ticket items that we spend money on, do we really need them? Looking at how we a couple of years ago or last year, we got in when they did our audit, one of the ththings they said were we're not properly using our credit cards there. So, I want to take a look at the way we use those credit cards. I've talked in some of the debates and speeches how most of the lieutenants and a lot of the sergeants are issued credit cards that, quite honestly, you can go out, and as long as you don't spend over $750 on an item, it's not really looked at that closely, because once it crosses that $750 threshold, it's a capital item. Those credit cards have a $3,000 limit on them each month that someone can spend on them. So, I want to focus on how we're spending that money. Be a little tighter on reviewing those charges and just what we charge on those cards. I also want to take a look at some things we can do at the jail. I had a civilian worker come to me up there. I've used this in the debates before, talking about our water bill up there and how expensive it is. But the inmates are allowed to take unlimited hot showers, and the toilets don't have what the sensors on them, so you can go in there and flush as many times as you want to. They get aggravated. That's one of the things the inmates will do. They'll go up there and flush things down the toilet, or just keep flushing the toilets. So there's things you can do up there to eliminate those problems and reduce those water bills. I even had a guy said,
have them dig a latrine.
Well, one of the guys said, why don't you put in a well system up there and save the taxpayers thousands of dollars in water cost. So there's a lot of good ideas that we can look at out there, and I quite honestly plan on entertaining just about every one of them that comes to me and making those that work the best to save the dollars for the taxpayers.
Talk to me a little bit about the team you want around you if you're elected sheriff. Not specifically who the people are, but what kind of people are you wanting around you as far as your administrative staff?
I want people that are going to be around me that believe in walking around management, that believe in talking to the individuals that do the job every day, that stay in touch with their employees. One of the best examples I use, we went to a new computer system here, our software package several years ago. We didn't really talk to the people about what we were using before we went to it, and it was quite honestly a miserable failure. The guys today still complain about the system that we have to use that's in place. We need to talk to those individuals that do the job every day before we go out and change one of the most important tools that they have out there.
Be good advice for the legislature, too.
Here's a great example. We just installed in-car cameras in all our patrol vehicles. Mm-hmm. Hey, that's a great tool, and especially in today's society where everybody expects video and audio and just about everything that you do. I agree with the process, but we installed cameras, bought 300 of them. We'd already installed close to 150 of them before we realized they didn't work at night. They only worked in the daytime. Now, why didn't we test the equipment and find out for sure what piece we had to take every one of those cameras out of the car, send them back to the manufacturer, and upgrade that equipment. So, I want managers that are going to be responsible, because that's a lot of money we're spending the taxpayer dollars. Mm-hmm. Before we go and spend that money, you better be responsible, and I want them talking to the employees and making sure that we are getting the best ideas from those employees.
I ask you this on the air, and again, for folks who see the video that didn't catch the radio interview.
Right.
What's the most valuable of your experiences as a law enforcement officer that helps you as you look to holding the sheriff's job?
It's a combination of everything. It's been from beginning to my patrol time in Montgomery, my education, time in patrol, time in SWAT. So I have that operational side of the house, background in tactics, background patrol, background in investigations, worked homicide and sex crimes and child abuse cases for many years. So that brings another avenue to me, to my management style, and seeing that. So I can look at basically just about everything in the sheriff's office from a perspective, because I've been there. And most importantly is that management experience. I spent the last 7 years as a lieutenant, which is a true manager in the sheriff's office. I've had budgets when I was in special operations with up to 170 employees, including the volunteers and the reserve units and all the operational units. And part of those units were some of the biggest ticket items that we have, like our bomb unit, hundreds of thousands of dollars in equipment cost, our ag marine unit with boats and all the equipment problems you got there. So I was forced to be able to forecast what we're going to need. We're going to need a new boat motor next year. Or, for instance, we had boat motors break down. I was able to take pieces of boats from over here and another piece of a boat over here and put it together and save thousands of dollars in taxpayer money by just being responsible with those different things under my command. So it's that management experience, working with those big budgets, big items, as well as all that stuff that comes from the operational side of the house as being an actual true line first responder patrol type officer. All that combination is what makes me the best candidate.
How tough is it to find a deputy that's dumb enough to go near a real bomb?
Well,
I say that because my cousin, who's the superintendent of the West Virginia State Police, used to be a bomb tech.
Oh yeah.
So I've had him in the family.
Wow.
Are you crazy, Jay?
Hats off to those guys. that was one of the units under my command, and those guys just do a tremendous job. And and they have to stay. It's not just bombs they have to work with; they work with all our biological hazards as well. So they have to stay on top of all of that stuff that's going on out there in society now through.
My Air National Guard days, we had you work in those chemical suits as part of our training. I can't imagine working in those suits and trying to do something as delicate as that job
Chem
is
suits
anyway.
and the bomb suits. The bomb suits are just. I mean, you can imagine wearing a Kevlar vest. Just imagine what the whole outfit is.
Oh yeah,
is hundreds. It just in this heat out here. Hats off to those guys. Tremendous job they do.
Lastly, and we'll give you a follow up after we're done here. But as of late in our last debate, disciplinary questions came up from the audience,
sure.
And let's give you a chance to address those. Folks are going to want to know about those issues.
Yeah, and we talked about it on live on the air, and there was a disciplinary issue 12 years ago. I've been an officer for 26 years. Never a problem in my file. I had one bad night there. The case was reviewed by the Sheriff's Office, by our internal affairs investigators, reviewed by the State Attorney's Office. It was a domestic incident, and also reviewed by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Standards and Training Commission. There was no cause found. There was no charges filed. The case was not sustained.
Was there departmental discipline involved?
There was some departmental discipline that was involved as a secondary offense that was part of the domestic. Quite honestly, I tried to remove myself from the situation. It had started at a 4th of July party, at a squad party with the whole squad, and many of the deputies were there. The incident started there. I tried to separate from that party, get back home. Probably should have not even went back there. Things got a little worse there. I left and tried to get away from the scene. The only vehicle that I had available to me at the time was my patrol vehicle. And I took that right back to where the original scene was, immediately called my commanding officer, reported it. He responded there. They took me down. I did blood alcohol testing, went through investigations, the whole 9 yards. So it's all right there in the file. And again, like we talked about, I'd be glad to discuss it. And I think the most important thing to take out of that is a year later, I was the 2002 Deputy of the Year for while off duty, apprehending a vicious murderer who had sexually battered and actually burned to death an elderly victim in Suntree.
Wow.
And I had come across him on my off-duty status and actually was responsible for apprehending him. And so, 2002 Deputy Year right after that, Sheriff Jack Parker had been tremendous. As soon as he came into office, I was moved into an investigative role as a supervisor or sergeant. A year later, promoted to lieutenant. A year later at that, asked to take over the emergency response team. So, a lot of these guys are out here want to make a big deal out of this, but if you're going to do that, then you got to say the sheriff was complicit in covering up some guy that was a bad apple, and that's simply not the case. I've continued to receive promotions, continued to receive awards, like we talked about most recently, assignment as a public information officer. And that's the guy's the face of the agency, the guy that gets on TV and talks when something bad happens in this community. We're certainly not going to make our public information officer that guy if there's something in his file that people are trying to make out that's in there right now.
All right. As we close it up, what do you want these folks to know about Todd Maddox? And if they want more information, where do they go?
They can go to the website, Maddox for Sheriff. They can go to our Facebook site as well. So and check us out there. Feel free to contact us through emails. I do my best to respond within 24 hours. Be glad to sit down and talk to anybody about any questions they have, concerns about my philosophies when it comes to Second Amendment rights, 10th Amendment rights, whatever they're concerned with, fiscal responsibilities that I have concerns with. So
I didn't ask the drone question today.
No drones. I'm not a big fan of drones, that's for sure. So we got plenty of paragliders down south in Palm Bay, right?
Exactly
so,
right.
Don't need drones. So.
Todd Maddox, thank you. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Bill.
We'll look for you guys back here on WMMB AM.com. Keyword video. More of these interviews coming up.